Start. Okay. Um, Greetings and hello to Madam Daisy. Our group actually consists of I, Cynthia, Dayang Asla, and also Farah, but she will do her own video, so we will compile it in this video. And I will proceed with the presentation of issue that affects curriculum implementation. So wait, let me present my screen first. So awkward, oh madam. Wait. Is it sharing my screen? Oh, not yet. Okay, cepat. My God. Is it full
Okay.
screen now, Ash?
You can click
All right.
hide.
So, okay. Okay. So for my part, I will do the issues on literacy, equity, and also technological innovation. So without further ado, let's start with literacy. So for literacy, there basically the definition is mostly about focusing on the ability to read and write at an appropriate level. For example, this definition from Blake and Henley from the year 1995, it stated that literacy refers to the ability to read and write to an appropriate level of fluency. But personally, for me, I like to think literacy as a meaning making process where people's or like a person himself relates to what is read with their own real life situation. And because when they know what they are reading, they will be able to relate it with their knowledge and their life experience. It's like, and if they don't know what they are reading, it's like they just read but they don't know what it's about or what do they relate it with. It's like filling an empty jar without knowing what you are filling in with. So, according to this one, Bill Cope and Medical Lenses 2009, they considered literacy as the implication of a new complex meaning making process. It's still about the reading and writing, but it's more complex where it's about a process of meaning making. So you can read it from here. It's too long, but that's the point of it. So let me continue with the issue. So the issue here is I only take one issue, which is this one, as you can see from the cursor. Um, it's a large and growing gaps in literacy skills by socio-economic status. I quote this issue from a study by Manane, Sohil, and Snow in the year 2012. So as we know in Malaysia, there's a lot of difference between the socio-economic status like B40, T20, those kind of stuff, and it's also apparent in the rural areas and the urban areas. So most of the people in the urban areas, their socio-economic status is higher, while the rural people are lower. So the first point, gaps between the less advantaged and more advantaged pupils. So the pupils who are from a very advantaged family or the family who are socioeconomically high status, I don't know, yeah, those kind of thing. They are more privileged where they are able to get the exposure towards books at an earlier age, like printed mediums, books, internet, newspaper, those kind of stuff. While those who are less advantaged, they are not able to have those kind of exposure due to low income. So that one is related to the second point where it is mostly associated with the family's income. Those with lower income couldn't afford to buy books or couldn't afford to expose their child with reading materials generally. And then number three, comprehension content. So for comprehension content, um, it is not up to the pupil's knowledge base. This one is especially for the less advantaged because as we as I mentioned before, they were not exposed to many reading materials. So maybe some of the content in the textbook, for example, they cannot relate or they don't know. For example, like about space, the name of the planets. If the teacher just uh, simply mentions the name of the planet without explaining what it is, like the planet Pluto or the planet Neptune, and the students will just like they cannot relate because they don't know what it is. And then like if the teacher is teaching about other countries, like in the previous textbook there was a topic about Japan. So I think if some of the students who were not exposed to anything about Japan, like they never read about Japan, they cannot relate it, and that that gives an issue there where they cannot how should I say it? The content the comprehension content does not is not up to their knowledge base. Okay, so the fourth point here is as early as age 3, middle class and disadvantaged children display enormous differences in the size of their vocabulary. This is according to Hart and Risley 1995. So it's apparent or like it's what is the term? What is that term? Uh, should I say? Um, wait, what is that term, Ash? Ash. Ash.
Yeah.
Is the term again? Uh, self-explanatory. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, this fourth point is self-explanatory, where the middle class or like the higher socioeconomically students, they have a very different size of vocabulary, where the middle class students have a very wide range of vocabulary, while those who are disadvantaged have a very small size of vocabulary. This is very obvious when you go to schools. Like for example, during my practicum one, there were in that class there was this student whose father is a doctor, and then there's this one student whose father is just a farmer. And then during class I can see how the student whose dad is a doctor knows more vocabulary and who can relate more to what I teach rather than the student whose father is a farmer. So that explains the fourth point here. So the effects on curriculum implementation from this issue is the difficulty in implementing HOTS, or higher order thinking skills, and also purposeful learning. This is according to Kokiyamaki and Ray 2011. Um, we know that our curriculum likes to no, our curriculum implements HOTS. It's also in our DSKP. But when pupils have a gap, when there is a large and growing gap in literacy skills, it is quite it's not really impossible, but it's very far from possible for those pupils, especially who are from a very disadvantaged family, to apply HOTS when they can't relate, or when they have a very underdeveloped literacy skill. So here, uh, a suggestion on solving it is to give room for pupils to share opinions and think critically and respond. This is according to Cambridge Assessment 2013. So by giving room, it means that don't go for a very specific topic, but go for a very broad theme and let the pupils give their opinions about it, so that when the teacher realizes that what common topic is known by all the pupils, then the teacher can actually choose a topic where they can relate for they can relate with each other. Okay, is my line okay?
So far, okay.
It's okay, can you? Hello? So far, okay. All right. Okay, continue on with equity. Okay, equity is very relatable in our country as well. Where let's go for the definition first. It is the quality of being equal or fair, fairness, impartiality, even-handed dealing. This is according to the Oxford English Dictionary. So for equity, it is significant to our country as it is a melting pot of different culture, beliefs, race, and etc. So the issue that I chose in equity is many rural schools in Malaysia did not have proper infrastructure and learning facilities. This is according to Abu Bakar Nordin 2011. Even though this issue is studied was studied in 2011, we can actually see even in 2021 it's still there. The issue is still there. Rural schools, and not really rural schools, like the suburban schools in here, especially in Kilo, for example, they still have they still don't have the proper infrastructure and learning facilities. So number one is the underdeveloped areas where there's no phone signals, there's no internet connection, no clean water, maybe no electricity like some schools in the rural area. They still depend on what is that called, the machine? Mm,
Generator.
yeah, generator. Thank you. Yeah, they still depend on that. And then number two, there's no schools for special education needs students. You don't have to look at the rural parts for this one. Even in the Kilo area, that is called that, which is a suburban area, not really rural area, that's a suburban area, they still don't have special needs school. So there's this one school, for example, that I've been to. There was no, I think every school that I've been to there in that area must have like an autistic student or a student with learning disability, which requires a special education need teacher, because they are the ones who know how to attend with those pupils. But because the special education needs schools are very far, like you need to go to town and it's very far, so maybe the parents have problem with um, sending their children to that school, so they have no choice. They just have to put their child in in an ordinary school. So that's another problem for special education needs students especially. And then the third point is significant gap between those in the rural areas and the urban areas. So this is actually connected with my previous point in the literacy issue. So yes, there is a significant gap between those in the rural areas and the urban areas. For example, during the PDPR, the pembelajaran dan pengajaran di rumah, those in the urban areas are able to use Google Meet to teach. So if they wanted to teach speaking skills, they can easily interact using Google Meet. But those in the rural areas, because of the internet connection, they cannot they cannot use Google Meet. So maybe their only choice is using WhatsApp. But for that one also, some people cannot send videos. Some can just send audio notes. So there is a limit for those in the rural areas, different with the urban areas. So the issue or the effect on curriculum implementation is of course the unequal accessibility for education. So how to solve? By using the principle of justice to prevail, where we have reverse discrimination and sponsored mobility. Reverse discrimination here um, is like the opposite of discrimination, where we know that discrimination happens to the minority, but for reverse discrimination, we apply discrimination uh, to the major group in favor for the minority. So in this issue or in this area, the minority are the ones who are in the rural areas. So we give more focus on them instead of those in the urban areas. And then sponsored mobility is where how do I say, you take those who are in the minority and put them in the majority group. So every individual provided with conditions they can succeed. So I think this one, the higher ups play a very important role to make sure that every individual, no matter where they are provided with conditions that they can succeed in terms of education. Okay, the last one is for my part is technological innovation. I don't think I need to give any definition for this one because it's very clear. So the issue for this one is access, training, and support. This is according to Johnson, Jacobina, Russell, and Soto 2016. Okay, so for access here means the insufficient equipment or connectivity. So insufficient equipment is, for example, there is no computers or maybe there's no uh, projectors for the teacher to use or to utilize innovation, technological innovation in their teaching and learning. And then there's no connectivity, as I said before, no internet or no electricity or maybe okay, there's no service. So they can't access technological innovation in their teaching and learning. The second one is training. So this one is a challenge of inadequate training related to technology. This is very apparent for this recent pandemic where PDPR needs to be done. So some senior teachers who doesn't have enough training in terms of digital learning, they don't know how to use. They don't really know how to do video video recordings or the technological learning. So that one is a challenge where they don't have the training. And then the third one is support. So as for support, technology integration include inadequate technical support and administrative support. This one is more to like colleagues or the admin, where they do not support each other in terms of technological support. I think that one is I think that one is very, how do I say, self-explanatory as well, because most school doesn't have a technical support or like an IT support. If in IPG we have the UICT, but in schools we don't really see that. Mostly they just appoint one teacher who they seem to think knows everything about ICT. But then the issue here is when it comes to working from home, where they are not that's where the technical support is not available. So I think that one is this issue for technological innovation. So the effects on curriculum implementation here is unable to achieve the objective of mastering ICT skills. So how to solve is improvement on internet accessibility and providing adequate infrastructure. That one is very apparent. So many schools need more of that. And also giving mastery courses for adequate professional development and training. This one is for the teachers. So teachers need more training. More professional development and training in terms of using ICT. This one is according to Edma et al. 2012. Um, and yeah, that is all for my part of the presentation. These are my references and thank you. Let me stop sharing first. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Mm. Okay, moving on to multilingualism. So, multilingualism is various circumstances in which two or more languages come into contact with one another, whether individually, socially, or across nations. So, a multilingual person, or nowadays we call them polyglots, they can communicate more than one language. For example, like I can communicate in Malay language, English language, Korean, just an example. Okay. So there are two prominent issues, like for the current issues in multilingualism. The first one is movement control order or MCO, where children's exposure to the ethnic dialects spoken at home. Like, for example, if the mother tongue of the pupil is like Kadazan or Dusun, so children are more exposed to the languages rather than English language or Malay language. The second one is ambilingualism, which is to be able to communicate in two or sometimes more languages with complete and equal fluency, meaning that a pupil they can master both language and can change it like in ease. Okay. So for the first issue, movement control order MCO, we know that MCO is implemented in 2020, uh, when the rise of the cases of COVID-19 is was um, was significantly increased like last year. So based on that, like Ministry of Education also implemented home-based learning or PDPR during the MCO. So basically, pupils are exposed to the first or the native language at home, especially in rural areas. So there are two sub themes that I want to share, which are receptive multilingualism and code switching practices. So for the first one, receptive multilingualism. So what is it? So it is a form of communication in which speakers from various linguistic contexts use their chosen languages while knowing the other speaker's language. So basically, like before MCO, pupils were often taught to speak and write in the formal languages, like when in face-to-face interaction in classroom, pupils and teachers are using like a formal language, like the mastery of languages is really being implemented in the classroom. But during MCO, there is optimum first language input, but English as the second language input is impacted severely. Okay, so meaning that even when the medium of instruction for English subject is in Malay, because parents need to explain the works to the pupils, especially in level 1 primary school pupils. Okay, so if teachers using Google Meet, okay, the level 1 pupils really need help from their parents to explain to them in like their native language or first language. So this issue causes parents who do not have good English proficiency, they will complain to the teacher like, teacher, can you please speak in Malay so my children will understand. This causes a negative impact that I will say in curriculum implementation during MCO. Okay, so hence teachers they need to also explain the learning content, like for English subject they also need to explain the learning content in Malay to avoid parents complaint. So this resulted parents and educators to be primarily concerned with the lack of organized curriculum for home-based learning, even with the guidance. Okay. And for code switching practices, teachers they use code switching practices to facilitate students' comprehension and knowledge of target language grammar and also reduce learners' learning anxieties. But students they use code switching for learning strategies in order to reduce their limited competence in the target language. So teachers have to use code switching via grammar translation method such as like when they explain the learning content, first they explain in English, and then they have to translate what the learning content is in Malay, because pupils are not in a conducive learning environment, meaning the pupils, they are not in a good learning condition due to maybe internet accessibility or not attentive in home-based learning. So basically, code switching practices, it actually benefits us in clearing pupils' doubts and reinforce learning, and to encourage pupils' participation, because when they understand the learning content, and then they will know what are they learning about. Okay, so basically, like for here, the translation processes, the teacher will use the source language and target language. It's like doing a synonym teaching and learning, whereby the teachers will act as a dictionary to translate all the learning contents. Okay. And then for the second issue, it is a ambilingualism. So actually, ambilingualism cannot be achieved because pupils cannot have the equal fluency in both first language and second language if they don't understand the content. For this issue, I would like to focus on CEFR, where in Malaysia we have lack of localized content and learning materials. And we are basically using a textbook which content was totally different from the students' socio-cultural experiences. This causes the struggles in preparation to learn and taught for pupils to absorb the content while still learning the language. For example, like in Superminds, the the learning content is one of the learning content is about Halloween. So pupils, they don't have experience or they don't have knowledge about Halloween. It is good to give them the exposure on the culture of the Western culture, but in this sense, for our curriculum, it is not it is not good enough, because for rural students, we need to destigmatize the culture influence, meaning that we shouldn't touch about the sensitivity of the rural school pupils, because Halloween is perceived as something to, how do I say that? Something to promote, is it?
Taboo. Um,
Something taboo in the local culture, isn't it, Cynthia?
yeah,
Okay,
true.
thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so for suggestions for multilingualism issues, for receptive multilingualism, so basically teachers need to teach key points of concepts instead of using that broad explanation and get the pupils tend to be lost in learning. Actually, teachers can use direct method, where teachers can use like realias or pictures or songs to point out the key points in their learning content. And then teacher can also apply interactive devices for successful interactions, such as using gamification or online quizzes, something that instill the mutual interaction between teacher and the students. For ambilingualism, so the curriculum developer also need to think and develop localized textbook that infuses with CEFR learning context. It is time consuming, but it will be worth it because it can help the students to understand the language contents that in line with CEFR. Also, teacher can use learning materials that is familiar to pupils' lives, such as using like local foods as realias in the lessons. For example, like in the topic get dressed in Supermind, the teacher can use like baju kurung or baju Melayu or cheongsam or sari to be promoted as like clothes that are familiar with the pupils. Like pupils are familiar with those clothes. So it will instill their motivation and their understanding in the learning contents. Okay. Next, we will have unity. So unity is the state of being joined together or in agreement. Unity in education, based on national education philosophy, applies that NEP wants to produce Malaysian citizens who are responsible and capable of achieving high level of personal well-being as well as being able to contribute to the harmony and betterment of the family, society, and nation at large. Okay, one of the prominent issue in unity is always vernacular school. Even though vernacular school has been established way after the way before independence, it is still a current issue that needs to be highlighted. Okay, so vernacular school are basically like what we call vernacular school are it's more like a racial based school. It's not like racial. It's like how do I say this, Cynthia? Vernac
Language. They
language.
use the mother language, mother tongue.
Mother tongue language. Yeah. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. So the schools foster unity through diverse background of the school community. For example, like SJKC, they're using like Chinese as their mother tongue. So they foster the unity the through the implementation of mother tongue in their school. Like they're really using the mother tongue. No, they are they are
They
really
really
using.
need the language. Like for SJKC,
Mm,
they even use Chinese or Mandarin in science and also mathematics, for example.
yes, like that. Like they highlight their mother tongue for the curriculum in school. So the issue is people call for abolishment of vernacular schools because the schools were said to have failed to produce students who are nationalistic and the perception of those schools as segregative and divisive obstacles to unity because when when the school used their mother tongue as the language, oh my god, okay, as the main language, the minorities, like for example, if the Malay pupils in the school, they will have like a hard time to understand the learning content because like for example, like Cynthia said, when they are using Chinese in science and maths, it will create like a segregative learning for the minorities in the school. So, as for suggestions for this unity issue, we can promote integration among races, like using the program of school integration program, pupils integration for unity plan, and the vision school program. So these programs, it is they are important to the pupils because pupils will be allocated, will be funded. They will be invested in unity programs such as such as there's like a program or
Sports.
sports. It's not like sports. It's like um back in my school time, I have this program like Minggu Rukun Negara, something like that. It's like during that week we have like different races. We will have like one one day where we are in the hall, and we have a seminar on unity. We also have like malam kebudayaan. Like we were going to the school and do like a culture nights with our friends. Mm, do you have any experience on that, Cynthia?
Not really. Probably because the school that I went to before,
Mm,
the schools neighboring it are all national schools, so we didn't really experience those kind of stuff.
mm. Okay, maybe for some schools lah. Okay, so okay, another one is to promote more school activities between national school and vernacular school. Like based on my experience and based on the experience of the teachers, like current teachers who taught the pupils, we we don't really have like the competition between national school and vernacular school. Like for debate, for example, we are fighting. It's not fighting. We are competing only among the national school. We don't really like doing do a competition within like national school and vernacular school. It's really hard to see the activities that really link up the national school and vernacular school. Hmm. So as a curriculum developer, like or maybe as a teacher, okay, we can promote more school activities such as like co-curriculum where we have like participants from national schools and vernacular schools together. Okay, these are my references, and that's all from me. Thank you. So that's all from us. God.
Eh,
A very good day to Madam Daisy and to whoever is watching this. So I will continue what Cynthia and Diana Asla has presented. Mine will be on special education and access. Starting from access, access in general can be defined as eliminating and reducing barriers within the curriculum implementation. Therefore, this includes goals, methods, materials, and assessment. A lot of stakeholders have made their stance based on access in education or curriculum. Universal Declaration of Human Rights said that everyone shall have the right to free and compulsory education, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Now, this is agreed upon by Malaysia's Convention of Children's Rights, which is encrypted into Article 28. After a few years, the education for 6 years old, which is a kindergarten education, is also made compulsory. Now, the issues when it comes to implementation of curriculum, there are four. Along with the advancement of our world today, when we are moving towards globalization, there will be an issue whereby the educational standard is closely following the globalized economic climate. However, what happened is when the pacing and the evolution of a curriculum is moving so fast, there will be a small group, at least, of children or students that will be left behind. When we are talking about technology advancement, most of these students do not even have a chance to even get their hands on these technologies. They rely solely on textbooks. So facilities as well as amenities were not made available for them. There are also issues of susceptibility to policy changes. Of course, the curriculum have to cater to the majority, but meaning all cannot always follow the curriculum. So that's why the curriculum has to always be adapted, reconsidered, and rethinked. So in terms of susceptibility, teachers as implementers will usually fall into a dilemma whereby when they receive the curriculum, they know for a fact that it's going to be a little bit difficult for them, a little bit or perhaps very difficult for them to apply to their school context. For certain teachers with high self-efficacy, they will definitely be able to solve it but for other teachers, this is going to affect their teaching performance, which then will also affect students' achievement of learning outcome. And the next is the vague range of subject and content to be taught. We are always reconsidering what the student requires for them to be relevant in their community and globally. But at the same time, it's very vague. For example, a very prevalent example today, previously we are teaching the subject technology maklumat, but recently they are going to pick out that subject and infuse it into other subjects. And then we are always rethinking about what values students need to have. So we are also teaching them sexual education. But even so, sexual education within primary syllabus are being criticized because they are not being taught what is necessary, and the way the knowledge is being interpreted was judged or criticized to be insensitive. And then there are also a constant consideration whether the curriculum should build the core knowledge and culture of literacy, or do we want them to have disciplinary understanding? So in other words, the question that we always ask in terms of access is, in order to implement curriculum, do we want to enhance students or optimize students' performance so that they will follow the measures? How do we do that? By manipulating students' access to certain subject? Or do we make the curriculum as general as possible so that students will have genuine freedom, balanced curriculum according to what they are being presented at school? The answer, according to Burr 2015, he said we can actually cater to both because there is existential relationship between performance measures and the nature of schools' responses. How do we do that? Now, based on multiple research I made, most of the research recommended the adaptation of a universal design for learning. The first recommendation is that there should be a framework that provide ways to remove barriers. So lucky for our education system, we have the nature of modularity, whereby if a certain outcome is not being met or is not achieved, the modularity nature of our curriculum allows us to revisit knowledge so that they can be improved, and then students will achieve the outcome or the expected level that they need to achieve. And then we promote accessibility to curricula and pedagogy. The approach that are being used in classrooms should be as such that it is not too difficult, but at the same time it celebrates the fact that learning has to have challenges so that students can learn to do, learn to be, and learn to live together. And then it has to foster learning's ability to achieve mastery within flexible environment and celebrate differences. Now this is when multiple intelligences has to be looked into. We need to celebrate all those whereby perhaps kinesthetic student who can translate their knowledge into projects can do so, and extrinsic students who can translate their knowledge into perhaps presentations or sharing to their class can do as well. So everyone can prosper within the confine of classrooms. And then next is representation, diversity, and considering discrimination. When we're talking about discrimination, we're not necessarily talking about culture, but that also plays a big role. We are talking about consideration of different backgrounds, but this does not necessarily mean that we have to have a representation of that in our textbook, because that will be hard to include everything under the sky. However, it should be presented in such a way that people can connect. So perhaps highlight the core values, and they can relate the core values to what they practice in their daily life. So a connection to their understanding of the world. And next, we're going to discuss about special needs. Now, special needs previously were not as celebrated as the way it is today. It was quite bizarre to see special needs people with disabilities to enroll in an education. But thanks to this phrase right here, education for all, these individuals are provided with education not only that is to the disability, but at the same time there are realm of diversity. So we're not just wanting them to survive or wanting them to live their life at ease, but at the same time they are seen as individuals that can contribute to their own community and contribute something for their country. That's why there is a necessity for customized educational intervention that are influenced by theories from experts, medical personnels, from those who are very well versed in the special needs domain, teachers who are majoring in this particular field, etc. Okay, so the issue here starts with readiness. As much as we preach inclusivity, celebrating special needs, our readiness is still questionable and is still being criticized because there is a misalignment in conceptualization and understanding of disability. We attend to that. How we cater to attention span, how do we understand their tantrums, etc. But how do we use that also to our benefit so that both the students and the school can provide quality product? And then they should be given equal opportunities despite their disabilities, and there shouldn't be any stereotyping. Next is, of course, facilities and resources of implementation. As much as we think that the curriculum are already being adapted and designed in such a way that they are very much included, there are also issues whereby the facilities are not as friendly for them. So what happened is, of course, the curriculum is there, but the tools for them to learn are not available. So for them who perhaps has anxiety towards the attempt of understanding complex knowledge, without these tools they will not be able to blossom. So they don't have visual aids, they don't have hands-on aids that will make it possible for them to apply their knowledge. Those are not made available. Now, although this is not happening in schools that specialize in special needs, perhaps this might happen in schools that have inclusive education or a mainstream classrooms where there are a few students with special needs in it. And then, of course, there has to be an early intervention program. Special need is not as such that you should do however you like. There should be opinions from experts, and decisions has to be discussed to ensure that people's or students' rights are first being made a priority. And then lastly, equitable assessment. We cannot only talk about wanting to provide them with a great education, but fail to assess them fairly. So there should be a comprehensive guideline, a very clear guideline as to how they are going to be assessed and how they can achieve the attributes within those assessments. They shouldn't be made competing with those who do not have disabilities. And the examination system should be clear as to the procedures and the environment before an assessment is being made. That is why for today, lucky for us, their examination has been such that it focuses more on life skills, and they can also proceed to secondary school. That is a career path that will allow them to contribute to the community. So we're not just talking about life skills, but we are also talking about them being employed. So, this is a question of who is responsible and how. The first one is, of course, the Ministry of Education. Fortunately, 1,600 teachers are trained to have the basic knowledge of handling special needs students. I think the amount or the number has increased. And then our government has invested substantial resources at the outset on system reform and revising curriculum to provide flexible, relevant, and high quality curriculum. With the resources being given by the government, the school administration then has to offer infrastructure, assistive technology, and disabled friendly materials based on case by case. You cannot just spend the resources that are being by the government. You have to really cater to those students. That's why it's important for them to get opinions from experts first, create a profile, and cater to their needs according to those profiles. And those profiles are going to be updated time by as their education progress. To favor multiple intelligences, we have to take account their limited attention span and their inconsistent learning motivation. I personally have an experience watching inclusive education on Roll, and I definitely saw that. No, I didn't saw. I interviewed the teacher, and the teacher said that it really depends on their mood for that day. So the curriculum implementation is actually based on their emotional intelligences as well. So if they're not in the mood to write, then for that day it's going to be another activity, but perhaps achieve the same aims and objectives. And then of course we have to utilize inclusive education as a communication tool between school and the parents, to discuss and solve issues. Regularly at school with this type of education, the teacher will update on students' progress, and their curriculum is such that they will not continue or proceed into another learning content if the one that are being implemented are not mastered. So even if what is to be mastered in semester 1 has not been fully achieved, it will be carried forward to semester 2. And then lastly, of course, the teachers and professionals are involved. There should be a consideration of multiple inclusive pedagogies, and we are talking about pembelajaran sepanjang hayat. As the field progress, definitely there will be new facts that the teacher needs to digest and also apply into their teaching practice, and that is to be done. And then modification of curriculum. The curriculum should not be taken as is. There should be a modification to fit the students, and then a divert from memorization to approaches that are more friendly towards them, perhaps using visual or keyword elaboration. And then, of course, the teachers have to engage in a collaboration to solve common issues and dilemmas so that there will be an effective implementation of intervention. And then lastly, this is a very terminalized phrase, functional behavior analysis and conducting hypothesis via subsequent behavior intervention plan in a cooperative learning activity. So basically, the analysis should be made and the plan should be critically thought through in such that there should be a behavioral based plan so that not only that they can overcome social anxiety, but at the same time they can cooperate with each other as the core of United Nations for learning, which is learning to be together, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so those are all that I'm going to present for special needs, as well as access. With that, thank you. Oh, and these are my references. Thank you.